Stanisław Październik, Rudolf Polak, Jan Jakub Porowiecki, Kawa Kawa, Rachel Abramowicz, Zuzanna Rosenbergowa, Jakub Rosenberg, Wolfram, Hilda Mark, Andzia Estera Hanna Edyt, Liselotte Schwein, Natalia Schwein, Charlotte Sala, Otto Laufer, Oskar Teitelbaum, Isaac Hedgehog, Isaac Modestfeld,
impossible to predict any kind of freedom in any Nazi concentration camps. These prisoners, you can see the drawing this kind of drawings, and we can see the prisoners of Auschwitz shown by him, and what kind of freedom to these people. Yes, the prisoners, they were joking. Why they were joking? To survive, you need to have good sense of humor. They were joking. You can read these jokes in the memorial. Well, yes, freedom. Good example. Right now, Germans, yes, the old Hitler, we can mention Oranienburg, Sachsenhausen, Bergen-Belsen, and many, many others. So Auschwitz, one of many other concentration camps, but it became, after, of course, the war, a top symbol of the Nazi ideology, of the Nazi policy against the imperfect people or the enemies of Hitler, because of its size and because it was Auschwitz, basically Auschwitz-Birkenau, the second camp we are going to see, which became, after 1942, the center of the extermination of the European Jews. So the Jews from Paris, from Rome, from Oslo, they were brought to Auschwitz-Birkenau. The other extermination camps, they were mostly the places where
politycznego promocji 3, zajęć świata są
So death is coming from the floors, not from the floors. So the children were lucky within 20 seconds. The others suffered up to 20 minutes. And death comes by so many beings, said as doctors. And one of the most beautiful things. complex working mechanism. So, you can see the variety of the mechanism, and about each single person, we can learn some information. Definitely always we find a name and always a personal number, numeral number. Only in the camp of Auschwitz, only in here, the only person was able to stay alive. As we learn that like a few days, a few hours, a few months. Prisoners, they were not murdered in gas chambers, not necessarily. Most of them died because of hunger, because of the diseases they had catch, because of tortures, because they were executed randomly.
Defend always some
Każde uderzenie po niemiecku musiało być skazane.
Could you imagine it?
The complex of Auschwitz officially on 27th January 1945, and the next year, 2025, we will have a ceremony dedicated to the 80th anniversary of this liberation. That's why everything looks different, yes, and that's why we can see the sites under the construction, not renovation, but construction. The renovation works, they take the preparation, construction of the things kept in secret so far, but they are all connected, all works are connected with the ceremony. And in the end, this camp, Auschwitz I, was built from scratch. Before the war here was a Polish village to build this camp according, of course, to the plans, to the drawing. So everything was designed to be either the concentration or the extermination camp. It was the camp which had two functions. It was either the concentration or the extermination camp. Two functions were joined. It was an exception. Most often they were either the concentration or the extermination camps. Here, these functions were joined, which means that the healthy Jewish people, they had a chance to survive as they were needed here. Yes, this concentration camp, it was a camp where the people were kept and these people were supposed to work, or they were the victims of the medical experiments. Yes, but they were for some reasons somehow needed by the Nazis. That's why the selections. In the other extermination camps, no selections. In Belzec, we know about 2 survivors, maybe 2 people. The others, yes, straight to the gas. There was no sense to keep them alive. Here, they might have been needed, and some of them during the selections, they were chosen to stay alive, and some Jews, actually many Jews, survived the war, they died like 2 years ago, or they are still alive, the former prisoners of the camp, but only because Hitler lost the war, not because during the selections they were chosen to stay alive. It happened accidentally because of the upcoming events. Anyway, Birkenau had the 2 separate functions, of course similar, but still different. And we are now in the concentration part of Birkenau. That's why we see the dormitories, the living blocks. And we can see the wooden ones. Nowadays we see only 1 row of the wooden blocks and the bricked ones. In the wooden ones were kept men. Women and children, the Polish children, were kept in the bricked barracks, and we'll pay a visit later to one of them, and you'll have a comparison between the living conditions of Auschwitz I with the ones of Auschwitz-Birkenau. Only 1 row was left, after the war, a practical decision was taken to dismantle the wooden blocks. It was too difficult and too expensive, well, the communist days, after a war situation, to keep them in the same shape. So they were dismantled. And now we see this field with the chimneys. But these chimneys, they have nothing to do with the crematories. They were the chimneys of the heaters. Well, the camp was insuranced, and the insurance company said, in each living block, a heater. And the Nazis were following the instructions. So in each barrack, there was a heater, a functioning heater, not an imitation, but no fuel given almost. So one big theory. Anyway, what we see right now, the pairs of the heaters, and one pair means one wooden block. It is basically the only difference, this lack of the wooden blocks between the realities we see now and what was seen by the Soviets who entered the camp. Yes, we need to imagine these wooden blocks, and of course we don't have the people. What happened? The Nazis didn't have enough time to take everyone with them, or of course they didn't have enough time to kill all the people who were unable to walk. So the children and the weak and the disabled people, they were locked in the blocks, and the Soviets entered and they liberated them. That is the liberation. There were no fights between the Germans, the Nazis, and the Soviets. The Nazis left. Unfortunately, they took with them all the people who were able to walk, and countless of them perished during this marches of death, the death marches, and they left behind the weak people. Ironically, they survived. Not always, they were sometimes too weak to keep going, and they were killed by food they were given, but still some of them survived. So the liberation, it means the opening of the blocks where were people still alive. And also the Soviets were trying to save the proofs you saw before, yes, the proofs against the Nazis' crimes. Of course, they wanted to hide their own crimes, but as I promised, we'll not go deeper into this part of the tragedy. Here they wanted to save the proofs to use them against the Nazis, which was, of course, a good thing to be done. So we are in the concentration part of Birkenau. What's more, we are in this female part, yes? The biggest one, of course, was the male part, we can see from a distance. And now we'll walk to see the selection place called Rampa. These photos before, we see them again because they were taken exactly in this very place. This part of Birkenau is called Rampa, and the selections were taking place exactly in here. The selection. So the people were getting off the trains, the Jewish people. Only when we talk about the Jews, we think about the selections. The other people deported here, they didn't experience any selection. They were meant to be the prisoners. So when a group of the Polish people, even the children with the elderly mothers, grandmothers, they were deported here, they were not selected, they were placed into the barracks. The selections, they were appealing only to the Jewish people, even the gypsies. There were no selections. All the gypsies were meant to be murdered, no selection. They were not asked, told to work even. For some reasons we'll not talk about now. Anyway, the selections were organized for the Jewish people only. So the Jews had to get off, of course, the trains, and they were told to create these two groups. Men had to stand on one side, women and children on the other side. Remember this, all these people were told a shower. It was logical, a separation. Anyway, very often they were the protest. The people didn't like to split, they didn't want to leave their husbands, their fathers, and of course the fathers, their children, etc. Anyway, they were told, please stay calm, the showers later, and after the showers you'll meet again, we promise. You see, the behavior of the Nazis is a very nice one. No one is shouting, no dogs, for example, here, yes? The people were told everything is under control and you'll start shortly your new life in this central, they were saying, Eastern Europe. That was what the people were hearing and in what the people, the majority of them, believed. if anyone was showing the sign of fear, if the people were asking the questions, they were, taken aside and they were, of course, killed. That was how it was functioning. But the strong majority, we know it for sure. We have the photos, but we have the many testimonials written after the war. Yes, we know how the people behaved. So the majority of them behaved like the ones shown on these photos. Not all of them, but the majority of them. And later, this moment of the selection, the Nazi doctors of medicine, they were deciding either immediate death for 70, 80, 90%, sometimes no selection, so everybody, but basically between 70 and 80% from here had to walk straight to one of the gas chambers located closer to the woods, to the trees. The others had to go to take a real shower, and their hell on earth was starting immediately. Yes, the people had to work, and they were meant to be eliminated, to be murdered later. They were meant to be used first of all. So another tragedy. This was the place the families could have been together for the last time. My friend Bernard Offen, he's now 95 years old. He survived Auschwitz, and it is the place he saw his father for the last time. Yes, and his father was taken straight to the gas, what we know now, but Bernard didn't know, and when he went, he was chosen to stay alive because he was strong and young, and he was taken to one of the wooden blocks. Actually, his block still exists, and he was asking, where is my father? And the prisoners were saying, your father is no more, forget him. But he really believed in the Nazi words himself. This is what he tells me every time we meet. So, well, that was the truth. That is what the people were expecting. Nobody expected the craziness of the Nazis to that scale. Over there we see the Gate of Death. This is the official name of it. This construction was created for the two purposes. It was meant to let the trains with the Jewish people in, and to let the empty trains out. And these trains were meant to go around Europe under Hitler's control to bring more and more Jewish people exactly into here, into this camp. Hitler wanted, his idea was to eliminate the 11 millions of the European Jews. He managed to murder 6 millions. 5 millions survived the years of Holocaust. Anyway, the number is the number we cannot think about. And now we'll walk towards the extermination part of Birkenau. We'll see the ruins of the of one of the gas chambers.
Toi aussi, tu rejoins le temps des villes.
Alors,
set a fire under the warehouses. The warehouses where were kept the Jews' belongings. Yes, the things brought into here by the people who hoped, who believed in life. So they set a fire under these warehouses, and the Soviets, a few years later, they were jumping into the burning warehouses and they were trying their best to save the objects. As I told you, this part of the tragedy, this story before. And what we have now in the extermination parts, apart the ruins, and we approach shortly the ruins of the gas chamber and crematory number 2. Apart the ruins, we have this memorial, and on 27th January, once again, this ceremony which will commemorate the 80th anniversary this year, the next year, the 80th anniversary of the liberation. Again, it will take place in here. So every year on 27th January, the Remembrance Day is celebrated exactly in front of this memorial. This construction, this is the communist taste of the 60s of the last century. A very controversial memorial. No explanation was given to this construction. It's modern art. You can read it however you like. Of course, the idea was to commemorate all the victims of Auschwitz. But it is as easy as it seems. It is according to
Without bringing up other questions.
a symbol of the crematory chimney. What means the other stones? I really cannot tell you. No explanation. It's open to the discussion, or maybe no discussion should be involved. It is a place we think about the tragedy. We remember the victims. That's maybe all. Yes. Anyway, maybe you'll switch on TV, switch on internet, and you'll see on 27th January 2025 the transmission of the ceremony coming from this very place, and you'll also see the entire spot. I suggest you to experience it if you find some time. Now we'll approach the ruins. This white model we saw before in one of the rooms of block number 4, because this model we saw before was constructed, was created according to the plans, to the drawings of this particular gas chamber and crematory. Your imagination will be a big help to you, because now we see only the stones, only the foundations. So we should recall ourselves this model, plus our imagination we should use, and we should see the people chosen to die queuing to go to the undressing room. This space I'm pointing right now, it was the undressing room. The people were supposed to leave their cloth. As a shower, it was logical for them. No one was almost protesting. When a particular group of the people was undressed, was naked, the people had to walk around the corner to this section behind my back, which they believed would be a shower room, and what in fact was a gas chamber. Yes, 2,000 people could have fit inside. 2,000 people at the same time could have been gassed. So this was a building, proper building, and the Nazi doctors of medicine, once again, yes, the same story we experienced before. Yes, the Nazi doctors of medicine wearing the anti-gas masks from the rooftop through the halls. They were throwing the opened cans with Zyklon B, Cyclone B, this gas, one can after another. Later the halls were closed and the people were waiting for 20 minutes. After the experiments, it was found out that 20 minutes was enough to murder everyone. So after this 20 minutes, no more cries, no more shouts, silence. We know exactly how the last moments of the people's lives looked like, because the prisoners were working in Sonderkommandos. They were promised life, they were promised many things by the Nazis as they were performing the worst job. But they discovered later that this promise of life to them and their families was another Nazi lie, because the were cremating the bodies of their children, of their parents, and they were promised life for themselves and their family members. So once they learned that it was nonsense, it was a lie, they decided to take the notes, and they were hiding because they knew they were not going to survive. So they were taking the notes, they were hiding the notes with their experiences in the jars, and the jars into the soil nearby. And these testimonials were found after the end of the war. Almost all members of Sonderkommandos died in here, were murdered in here. As far as we know, 2 of them survived. They are the memoirs of one of them you can find in a bookstore. Anyway, we know exactly how much the people suffered. I mean, we know how they felt, what they were shouting, for how long. Yes, everything is written down, and it's all the truth because it was written by the eyewitnesses, yes, of these tragedies. After this 20 minutes, no more, as I said, shouts, no more cries, one big, loud silence. And the prisoners had to open the other doors, and they were putting the corpses on a lift, and this lift was transporting the bodies on the upper condemnation, and the prisoners, the Sonderkommando members, had to shave off the women's heads. They had to search for the golden teeth. They had to collect the jewelry from the people's bodies, and also inside the bodies they had to search. Later they were putting the corpses to the crematory ovens, 1 hour approximately for 2 corpses. And the ashes of the cremated bodies were thrown most often to the ponds located by the crematories, but of course not enough room. So also they were thrown to the rivers, like Vistula River nearby, or as people say, they were thrown on the fields, and from this suspicion came that they were used for purposes to be the fertilizers, but we have no proofs. Anyway, this is how this production of death was looking like. I'm telling it, I know how inhuman it sounds, but this is what the Nazis did. They created the death factories. Dehumanization, the total dehumanization, and no respect to people after death as well. Yes, these people were not the people in their eyes. They were nothing. Yes, they were not entitled to live, and they didn't deserve, according to them, any respect after death. And we say, once again, I will say it, we say Auschwitz, a museum, we say memorial, we say the former complex of the Nazi camps. Yes, it's all the truth. But first of all, Auschwitz, the complex of Auschwitz today, in the 21st century, yes, 2024, today, 4th December, this is the cemetery. Yes, the ashes of the people are still here. It's possible to go behind these ruins and find a trace of the people's bones, the traces of the people's bones today, not 8 years ago, today it's possible. We cannot do anything. We cannot bury these people. We are here to remember that, and that's the only thing we can do. And now we walk backwards and we'll pay a visit to one of the Greek smell, the dirt, the lack of the fresh air, the diseases, the bugs which were eating them alive, and women were less needed by the Nazis. They were not as useful as men. They were not as strong physically as men. So even worse conditions they were going through, less care, it's possible to say, less food were given to them. Very often the blocks, the barracks, I mean, they were simply locked and women were left to die. There was not enough room for them in the gas chambers as the transport with the Jews were coming. So this elderly Polish women, they were left to die. Yes, as simple and as terrible again as that. So we'll walk around one of the brick blocks. We'll see the bunk beds. Also, they have 3 levels, but not 2 people were sleeping on one level, but sometimes 15, sometimes more. Also, the last consignation was used as a sleeping section, as a sleeping place. There were no mattresses almost given to them, only the straw, the dirty blankets, nothing proper, nothing more. And also what we will see inside some graffitis, they were not made by these women but by the vandals. Okay, so please do not look at the inscriptions on the walls. Do not think that these women left any trace of their presence. Nothing, as far as we know, was left. So we will walk around this, but your imagination is needed. But according to the survivors, the summers were worse, as it was impossible to breathe properly. Yes, there were no windows, proper windows. They were here in holes, but not enough. They were to give to let the fresh air in. So the women here is also suffocation. So of course it was another torture to have a heater without the possibility to warm up the building.
Huh? Could have been fucked. How you doing, son? All right? How you doing? All right? Good tour.